Hello, welcome to Dev for Hire, a series where I solve real game development problems as a contract developer. In each episode, I receive a ticket or a task and show you step by step how I solve it. And today, I am Carlos and we are working at Not Concerned Ape Studios. They hired us to help them start the development team, and after finishing the world design, the level designer and the artist created the scenes in Unity, but they don't know how to program, and that's why they hired us to help. We already implemented the character movement using Drive's architectural reference, but now the new product owner has assigned us the ticket 01. Okay, let's break the problem into parts. We have two scenes and we can connect them using the scene manager.loadScene method, but only loading the scene is not enough because we need to know where the player should spawn in the next scene. And to solve this, we have a lot of possible solutions, but today I want to use a specific solution that will allow us to send information between scenes when we load them. With this, we detect which portal the player entered and it will give us the information needed to know where the player's position should be in the next scene. Starting with the last part, we will have a portal in the world. And as soon as the character enters in this portal, we send a notification to the scene controller. The scene controller receives the information and checks if the character is the player. If it is, it will load the scene the portal was pointing to, but it will use the scene loader and not only pass the scene name, but also the data to send to the next scene. The scene loader will handle it and call the next scene. And in the next scene, we have the scene controller that will receive all the information in the awake method. With this, we can now detect which portal the player came from, find the portal in the scene that is linked to that portal from the other scene, and place the player at the correct spawn position. With Phantom Navigator, I could simply execute my custom quick action to bring the implementation directly into any project, and this is how I get solutions so quickly in new projects. But let's suppose it is the first time Carlos is implementing it. I will start by creating a folder for the scene loader feature, and inside it I will create a new script and name it scene loader. And let's delete everything inside it and start from scratch. Make it a static class to make it clear this is a global service for our game. And now we need a dictionary that will link a scene ID to the data that we want to receive in that scene. We don't have a scene ID yet, but it's basically just an enum. So let's create the enum scene ID, and for each scene in our game, let's add its name here. And don't forget to assign values to enums. It's my personal experience because breaking enums can waste you days of work, so let's protect ourselves here. And now we need a way to fill this dictionary. And to do it, let's create a method called addSceneData that will receive the scene ID and the scene parameter as a generic object. Then in the dictionary we bind both. Now, the next step here is to be able to load the scene. So let's create a loadScene method that will use our addSceneData, and let's do a minor check to make sure we successfully added the data. And then we can use the scene manager.loadScene, passing the scene ID. Then we create the consumeSceneData method that will be called from the scene controller, and it will retrieve the data and delete it from the global memory. Alright, now we have the scene loader, but we are missing one important part of the solution, the scene controller. Let's create a new script under the same folder as the scene loader and name it scene controller. Before anything, I want the scene controller to be something that is inherited only, and each scene has its own specific controller. For example, we are going to have the farm scene controller and the intersection scene controller, but both will inherit from scene controller. To achieve this, we can add the abstract keyword to the class to make sure it can only be inherited. Alright, but what do we want here in this class? We simply want to receive the data, right? But we don't know yet what type of data we are going to receive. We can have different data types and fields for each scene, so let's create a generic type T, name it scene data, and also make the scene controller receive this generic type T. We also need to fix a scene ID that represents this scene. For that, we create a getter of type scene ID that later we will make return the scene ID corresponding to this. And in the awake method, we fill the scene data using the consume scene data from the scene loader. Translating it to my brainy voice, we have, hey, scene loader, I am the controller of this scene ID. Please provide me the data that I need. And now we have to define what type of data we want to transition between scenes. For this project, we already know that we need to pass which portal we came from. I will just comment here, portal, but in the next step, we are going to implement it. Before we start working on the scene controller, I think it's time to create the portal. First, I will simply create a sprite 2D in the scene, add a box collider 2D, mark it as a trigger. Then I remove the sprite renderer, adjust the scale and position it where the portal should be. Now I create a folder called portal and inside it I create the word portal script. Every single portal will have an ID representing the link between two maps. Let's create an enum and name it portal link ID. Then, in the word portal, we need to point the current portal to a link. So let's create the portal link variable and assign it in the inspector. But let's not forget to add the word portal script to the portal. And every time any character enters this trigger, I want to notify the game. To do this, I create an action receiving the word portal and a character, and I name it onPortalEnter. By the way, I used the same technique in my states machines course. Anyways, now we need a way to trigger this event. So let's use the onTriggerEnter2D from the monoBehavior. If it has a character component, we trigger the event passing the portal itself and the intruder. For now, this is enough. We'll come back here later, but our portal is now capable of notifying the events that really matters. Now someone needs to listen to this event to handle it. Who do you think should be? Yes, the scene controller. Let's create it. Now give me a minute to show you something. I'm going to show you how I use Phantom to create scripts that I use in all of my projects. If I press Shift-G and type screen, it will find my custom script that creates a new screen for me. So if I type farm and press enter, Phantom will create the new farm script for me using my preferred project folder structure. And of course, I am providing the code in the description because you don't own Phantom yet. So let's open the script. Remember in that video where we learned how to add controller support in our Unity project? See, I really use that, and as you can see, I don't need to spend time re-implementing it. But to make it easier, I will delete any code that is not necessary for now. Now, inside our farm script, let's make it inherit from the scene controller class and expect a word scene data. And override the scene ID to return the farm scene ID. To be able to get data from the scene loader, we need to force our awake method to call the base.awake. Now our scene controller will hold a list of all the portals. And on awake, we can use the find objects by type to find all the portals. If you don't like that, you can drag and drop the portals to the list manually. With the farm scene hour of all the existing portals, we need to loop through each portal and listen to the onPortalEnter. For that, we can create a method called onCharacterEnterPortal inside our controller and add a debug.log to check if it's working. Inside the consume scene data of the scene loader, use the bug.log instead of the bug log error because in the first scene, it is expected to have no data to consume. Now, if we press play, the console is telling us that the scene controller is in fact receiving the event from the portal. Back in the code, now instead of the bug.log, we can use the scene controller to load the next scene, but first we need to know what scene to load, and this we can define in the portal. Inside the portal, add a scene ID field, and make sure you can read it from outside. The next step is to pass the data that we want to send to the next scene. Let's start by creating a word scene data object and passing the scene loader parameter. But the data is still empty. We want to send the portal link ID. So let's add this field to the word scene data and fill this value with the link ID in the portal before loading the next scene. Back in the scene, let's make the portal load the intersection scene, assigning this value in the scene to load field of the portal. In order to make the scene load, we need to update the scene list. The next step is to add a spawn point to the portals. Inside the word portal script, let's add a transform reference and name it a word point and make sure it is accessible. In the scene, let's add a child game object to the portal, position it and assign to the portal. Now everything we did in the farm scene we need to do to the intersection. Create a scene controller, create the portals, grab the portals, listen to the events and call the scene loader. Okay, now we can go back and forth between the scenes, but we are not positioning the character correctly. To solve it, it's simple. The moment we are looping through the portals, we can check if the word portal link ID matches the link ID we received in the scene. And now we can load scenes passing information between them. Don't forget to hit the like button to help me, and see you next time.
If you really want to dive deeper into game development, I strongly suggest you take a look at my work. I have excellent courses for both beginners and advanced developers. With over a decade of experience in Unity, I am pretty sure you will find an interesting project on my Udemy page, packed with clear, simple, and thoughtful explanations and analogies. And of course, I also provide one-to-one lessons that you can easily find on my LinkedIn page. Thank you very much for your time. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to boost this channel and receive more and more quality content.